I'd like to share with you some quotes and things I've picked up along the way about healing and get your comments. Because I think there's some very interesting things said about healing by various people, authors, spiritual teachers, healers themselves, that you might say push the boundaries in terms of our belief about healing and so on. First of all, a lovely lady called Sue Morter, who has her own, I don't know if you know her, she has her own healing clinic, I think in Cartmel in California, and is quite a well-known person out there. She says, the body has the ability to heal itself rather than being medicated or surgically altered. If our body isn't healing, we would do ourselves a great favour by establishing why rather than seek out another treatment of the symptoms. What would you say to that?
In full agreement.
Yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. Because the body has been brought somehow out of balance, yeah? Not just the body, but also the energy body, the aura and the chakras around us, our alignment between spirit and earth, between heaven and earth, through which we have incarnated, is out of alignment. If we can bring all of that back into alignment, then indeed we can heal ourselves from anything, from the common cold to Parkinson's to whatever. Everything can be reversed.
MS, that sort of thing?
I would think
All
so.
of it, yeah.
Oh, I would think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. This is from the Law of One series. I don't know if you're familiar with that. A channeled book written by Carla Ruckert and Don Elkins. One of the great spiritual books, in my opinion. And in that is the following. It says, the healer does not heal. The healer is a channel for intelligent energy which offers the opportunity to an entity to heal itself. Healers are only responsible for offering the opportunity of healing. What do you say to that?
Brilliant. Yes. And that for me is also again such a difference between the kind of work we do and from the kind of perspective we work in comparison to the medical world, where we really try to promote the client to remain self-responsible and active in his or her own healing process. Yeah, and we as healers open up the space for that healing to happen. And we can bring through certain healing techniques, and that's where the healer comes in, what the client initially cannot do. We can bring in certain healing techniques to indeed enable the client, the patient, to step into that sphere of light, of love, of compassion, of full acceptance of the self, and therefore surrender all limitations which have previously been put onto the client by either themselves or society or parents or who or whatever else.
So you don't heal, you facilitate healing, is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I do use certain techniques which the client will not be aware of and which the client will not have been trained in using, and these techniques can be really of huge benefit for the client's process, but initially the client needs to surrender whatever they need to surrender in order to allow that healing process to unfold within them. And I need to, and other healers need to indeed be in such a state of loving compassion and safety and security for that surrendering process to take place. If we cannot facilitate that holding of the client's space, then the healing will not work.
Dolores Cannon, this is sort of slightly follows on from what you were just saying, I think. She says, healing can only occur if an individual wants to be healed, and it does not interfere with the goals of their lifetime. A blind person will not heal his sight if being blind was one of the key aspects of the life he has agreed to experience.
True, absolutely. And I can mention an amazingly almost crude but beautiful poignant example of that. many years ago, a young woman came, 23 years old, tall, blonde, gorgeous, from Australia. She had one of her ovaries removed already. She had cancer in her other ovary and womb, and all over 6 areas of her body were riddled with cancer. And the doctors again had no cure for her. Also through the interference of Saint Francis, she was a Saint Francis devotee, and I liked Saint Francis and all that kind of stuff. So he came through during the healing with his female friend Clara, and it was just awesome. Then client goes back to Australia, brilliant, happy, A year later she comes back. A series of sessions, healing takes place again, really awesome. She burst out crying at the end of the last session. She said, "Wow, I'm so glad I've had cancer because I learned so much." Then I didn't hear from her for a few years. Then I get a phone call from her father, who lived in the Lake District. She herself lived in Australia with her mother. Her father lived in the Lake District, had been remarried with a woman, a medical doctor herself. And daughter had cancer again and was in a hospice in the north of England somewhere, in the very last stages. And she called for me, but that was such a last stage. And she died a few weeks later. Then at some point, Glenn, her stepmother, so the medical doctor, the new wife of her father, rings me and says, "You've been able to help her a couple of times. Have you got any idea why you were not able to help her this time?" And I said, well, there were issues with her mother she was not able to resolve. And then stepmother said, "Wow, that's interesting that you say that," she said, "because I spoke about it with her father, and he had spoken about it with her issues with her mother, and the father had said to her, to the daughter, you need to say these things to your mother. You need to tell her that openly and frankly." And daughter said, "No, father, I can't. I'd rather die." And she died. So that is such a poignant example of no healer, no healing of whatever kind can have any effect if basically deep within the heart and soul the daughter has made that contract. So that quote.
And can you detect that during the healing? I mean, is that something that comes through spirit? Do you sometimes get from your spirit guides, this person has contracted to have this disease and it's not appropriate for them to be healed?
Not that that's not appropriate for them to be healed, but that they're not ready to not be healed.
Okay.
For whatever reason.
Okay.
Healing is always appropriate, but they need to make some kind of shift. And this young woman, for example, needed to make the shift, indeed, probably as her father said, to really openly discuss these kind of things with her mother, which she did not do, out of choice.
Okay, thanks very much. Dolores again, she says, "Know that love and gratitude are the greatest possible response to everything. This is the ultimate healing." Imagine you would agree with that.
There is no force in all of creation greater than the healing power of love.
Beautiful.
That is one of the insights of the Findhorn transformation game, and I think it's also a quote from Course in Miracles.
Now here's a slightly more controversial one might say, again from Dolores. We have to get away from the brainwashing we've had all our lives that tell us to depend on outside sources for healing. And that would include you, wouldn't it, Tjitze?
How do you mean, Glenn?
Well, you're an outside source for healing, aren't
yes. But as you said in an earlier quote, we make the space, we facilitate the space.
Yes.
Yeah?
I'm just playing devil's advocate, of course.
Okay. Absolutely. The client needs to be self-responsible, self-healing, and basically be not dependent on any outside source. And that needs to hopefully start at an early age. But If not, then it can also happen in people's 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, at any stage of life, where they totally take full responsibility of every action, every word they utter, every movement of the body, and therefore can check that every word spoken, every thought, every movement made, every action undertaken is in alignment between heaven and earth through their incarnation.
There is quite a serious question, though, here, isn't there? Many people say and believe that they or we can heal ourselves. And so, in a sense, to go to someone for healing, isn't that a contradiction, and for reinforcement of the contradiction, as it were?
It is seemingly so.
Yes.
But then not totally, because yes, we can heal ourselves. Absolutely. We ourselves, towards our own issues and towards our own shadow side and towards restore subconsciously, have blind spots. Yeah, and these blind spots can easily stop us from indeed having the overall picture of who we are and what we need to do and what would be the right thing for us to heal. And it is then our task as healers, also it ought to be the task of the medical profession, to point out these blind spots in people and to come up with alternatives and explore alternatives with and for the client to say, what can we do instead?
Okay, thank you. Wonderful. Okay, Mr. John Randolph Price, one of my favourite spiritual teachers, he says, how do we heal the body? We cannot, because the body is already perfect. When we know that, our mental emotional system is the only thing that requires healing.
In essence, the body is perfect, but through conditioning, through limitation, through restrictions, we basically create the imperfection in our body.
And through our belief system.
Through our belief systems, through our images, through our false actions, through staying in a job we despise, through doing a study because our parents want us to do the study, and because we slowly then drift away from our spiritual essence.
How about this?
Come on then.
Gene Rockefeller, you cannot heal yourself and have that healing end with you. It will vicariously extend to everyone.
Of course. Of course. Because when you're healed, and the person I spoke about before, Sylvia Black, here in Findhorn Village, in the park, is for me a really strong example of that. Yeah, she was at death's door, literally. She's healed, and she radiates. People who meet her, and I often have her meet my clients in order for them to hear her positive story and to be basically showered over positivity and possibilities of healing. Yeah, and she radiates this incredible smile, brightness, hope, positivity, and therefore indeed her healing ripples and ripples and ripples and ripples. And may therefore, Glenn, may therefore loads of people be healed so that they can ripple forth. And may therefore all the dams and obstructions that stop ripples, consciously or unconsciously, yeah, may they be washed over by the ripples of positivity.
And presumably the converse is also true, is it? People who are suffering, people who are in pain and need healing, if you like, they are rippling or sending out the opposite sort of message. Yeah.
And they seek each other's company because it's comfortable. Misery loves company. Yeah? There's another insight, another setback of the transformation game. Yeah. Misery loves company. But also light loves company.
Right.
Yeah? Absolutely.
Beautiful. Thank you. Okay. Yes. Sri Yukteswar Giri, for those who may not know, Sri Yukteswar Giri was the guru of Parahamsa Yogananda, who wrote the wonderful book, The Autobiography of a Yogi. He says, imagination is the door through which disease as well as healing enters. Disbelieve in the reality of sickness, even when you're ill. An unrecognized visitor will flee.
That's beautifully poetically put. I could have written that myself. But yes, indeed, imagination, spirit, working from your essence, yeah, then you can totally bring any healing to yourself and to anybody else who is allowing him or herself to surrender to that wave of positivity.
Mm.
If you also, through that belief system, create through your inspiration the negative part of it, yeah, and follow that because of whatever egotistical reason behind it, then indeed you undermine your immune system, you undermine your health, and you basically invoke and invite illness.
Yeah. Okay. Now, this is from Hewan, Barbara's spirit guide, who says, all disease, no matter what its form or manifestation, is the result of forgetting who you are.
Yeah. Because in essence we are spirit, we are light, we are bodies of light. My healing course is called Bodies of Light. Barbara Brennan, her book is called Hands of Light. We are in essence light beings, yeah. And in that it is our task for our spirit and the development of our spirit to radiate forth light. And to live in light and breathe light and speak light and be light. And everything that distorts us, that distracts us from that source of inner light, not the outer light, the inner light, that indeed brings us out of alignment between spirit and body and earth. So we need to stay in that aligned alightness.
And that's the perfect introduction to my next and
Great.
final quote. This is from a chap called Tjitze de Jong. I don't know if you've heard of him. Anyway, he says, ultimately, when people live from their inner source of light, illness and disease become an impossibility.
Yeah. And the inner source of light, basically the core star, the core essence, which sits physically in the solar plexus area of our body, is our eternal light, around which we have incarnated. The eternal light being that we are, that we have been for millennia through every incarnation beforehand, and which we will be for millennia in every incarnation after this one. If we can totally keep upwelling that light and live by that light, then indeed, as I said before, our chakras spin happily and absorb the healing light into us. Our aura is huge and powerful and colorful, and simply allows us to not have any illness and disease. Because we live then automatically in alignment of our spirit, of our life purpose, of our physical incarnation on planet Earth. And if that alignment stays in place, Bob is your uncle.
Thank you. Tjitze, we touched upon relationships. Wonderful. He's laughing because I said Bob was your uncle to him earlier, so this is a bit of an in-joke. We talked about relationships briefly earlier in the interview, and you talked about the situation with the cords. How important are relationships to our health and well-being?
They are incredibly important because it's supposed to be, if you are in a relationship, an intimate relationship, partners, husband, wife, whatever, we ought to share with that person our soul, our heart, our love, our longing, and also what we do not long for, and also what does not seem to work in that person towards the self, in that relationship towards the self. So we need to filter that, and in that we need to be immaculately honest with ourselves, ruthlessly honest. Yeah. Basically, in the German word for that would be rücksichtslos, honest. Rücksichtslos literally meaning without looking back, honest. Yeah. So, and through that honesty, if both can live in that honesty and find the fun, the laughter, the joy, the love, the passion, and the exuberance in that, then it's the same thing. Again, Bob is your uncle.
Wonderful. Tjitze, how do you see the future of healing?
In that respect, Glenn, I see us now, and Barbara Brennan is again is a prime example of that. I see us now at this stage as pioneers, yeah, and pioneers are often in the beginning ridiculed, they are judged, they are quite often outcasts of society because they don't quite fit in the whole framework of society's thinking. But basically, one of these pioneers 500 years ago, Christopher Columbus, he was also doomed a lunatic, yeah, for thinking that the Earth was round and he could just sail to the Indies, yeah. Well, 500 years later, he's still famous, yeah. And it's not that I want to be famous still in 500 years' time. That's not my aim in life. But basically, the essence of that is we are pioneers, and we need to slowly drift away from our dependency on chemical stuff, because that is unnatural and it is sometimes not health inducing whatsoever with all the side effects. And that creates a chemical dependency on the physical body. We need to get away from all the chemical stuff and get more into that energetic way of healing, because that's nature. And we are nature, whether we like it or not, whether we despise it, whether we hate it, whether we don't like it and reject it in ourselves, we are in essence nature. So also in nature lies our healing, and not in a chemical formula.
I also wanted to ask you briefly about so-called spiritual surgery, which is surgery without the knife, and how you see that as a potential future.
Well, spiritual surgery, I do it almost every day when I have clients. It's great fun, because it works on the 5th level of our aura, of our energy field, where basically that level of the energy field holds a whole template where the physical body fits into. And if I operate on a client without knives, although they might put knives through my hand into the client, yeah, but not physical ones.
An energetic knife.
Yeah, not physical ones. I've never seen any blood, yeah, so don't worry. But it is fascinating, Glenn, because the healing basically happens then on this 5th level of the aura, which is, depending on the client, about 50, 60, 70 centimeters above the body. How many inches that is, I don't know. It's up to you. And basically the guides, my spirit guides, lift the particular organ out of the body energetically, and it hovers in front of my eyes, and that's where everything happens.
Wow.
It's fascinating. When I first saw that, we just, it is just truly fascinating. When the healing is completed according to the guides, yeah, I'm not in charge, the guides are, I'm just the gateway through which they work. Then very slowly and gradually they let the organ sink back into the physical body, fuff around with it a bit, and it's all functioning better. It is truly fascinating. And again, there's no blood, there's no scarring, there is no side effects. So when more people learn this, and one of the people who does this so well, for example, is the guy in Brazil, John of God, yeah, and he does miraculous work in this stuff, and he's got various guys working through him depending on the presenting complaint of the client. And everybody, again, as I said in an earlier part of our interview, everybody can do this. So therefore, if we can allow this to happen more, we will slowly become less dependent on this intrusive medical procedure.
So we need more spiritual surgeons.
We need more light workers.
Right.
And it can include spiritual surgeons.
Okay.
Yeah, we need more light workers.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about, because there's a fascinating picture in Barbara's book, Hands of Light, where she actually shows, I think it may be a drawing rather than a photograph, I'm pretty sure it is a drawing, where she actually shows someone's energy field, a client of hers, as having this sort of lance-like object in the energy field with this very sharp point and a sort of curly handle. And she says in the book that this related to something which happened to this person in a former life, that it was she or he, I think it was in a fight or whatever. But irrespective of the story or the circumstances, do you have experience of that, and how does that work, where you can actually see things in that people have experienced in the past?
Oh, absolutely. That's again such a normal thing. Yeah, for people like myself, for graduate of the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, for graduate of Bodies Light, it is such a normal phenomenon to indeed observe and remove from people, because we have lived 1,000 lives before this one, yeah, and we will live 1,000 years after this one. So all our previous lives have not been scar-free, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We've all been killed and strangled and murdered and drowned, and we all have killed and murdered and raped and pillaged and whatever else. Yeah, simple. We are that as a human race. So we hold the scars, and our present incarnation basically is shaped in such a way with this, the kind of parents we have, and the kind of culture we grow up in, the kind of country we grow up in, the language we speak, etc., opportunities that come our way, so that basically we are directed along a certain path by our guardian angel and spirits.
Mm-hmm.
We directed along a certain path, and then encounter these kind of opportunities and people and situations that can help us along a path towards the eternal light. And I have not met anybody yet who has reached that eternal light. But there's always hope.
Right. Tjitze, you're so enthusiastic about what you do. You're so enthusiastic about your work. Your passion really comes through. Tell us about the joy. Tell us about the joy in what you do and what this brings to you and to those around you.
For me, what I sometimes say to my individual clients, and what I absolutely say to my students who allow themselves to be taught by me for this whole 10 months Bodies of Light circus, my clients and my students allow me to live my life purpose. And I've made the conscious choice, slowly bit by bit, over the years, in the crooked way called my life's path. I've slowly made a choice to make this my life, and to indeed fully live and embrace my life purpose for this incarnation. And therefore, all these life choices that are made, which we spoke about in our first section of our series of interviews, basically they were all geared up towards where I am right now. And whether it will lead to me in 1 year's time, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, I don't know. But it's an adventure, and I'm embracing this adventure fully. And there are not many people I meet who can indeed wholeheartedly and whole-spiritedly say, I live my life purpose. And that is what I do.
Beautiful.
And that brings me enthusiasm and passion and love and compassion and joy.
Beautiful. Tjitze de Jong, it's been a huge pleasure. Thank you very, very much for being on, sharing your passion.
And thank you, Glenn, for taking the time to come to my house.
It's a pleasure, absolutely. And the enthusiasm and the joy with which, I've shared now, I think it's about 4 or 5 hours with you, maybe even longer, Tjitze. It's been just great to have you as company and to share this experience together. So thanks again for that. And it's beautiful. And I hope that you will also enjoy and maybe think about what you've heard. And who knows, maybe some of you out there may even become healers with or without Tjitze's assistance. But anyway, I'm your host, Glenn Moore. Thank you very much for joining me on sharing your passion, and I'll see you again on the next one. Yet again, thank you very much, Tjitze.
Thank you, Glenn. Bless you all.